clicks get last message again because he wants to see if there's anything new, is going to return message number 2, let's hang out, because that's the one with ID 2. And then finally he's going to do it one more time for a replica that's only seen message 1 as the last one, and now he's going to see hey guys. So effectively, even though it started out as if he had seen all 3 of those messages, what's happening is our reads are effectively going back in time, and things are coming in backwards because we're reading from replicas that are progressively less updated. And that is obviously going to be a pretty big problem. So as you can see, I've written down the messages are coming in reverse order. So what actually is our fix here? Well, in this case, one easy thing that we could do is actually have our user read off of the same exact replica every single time. So even though the data that you might be getting could be stale, it's certainly not going to be going back in time because you're reading off the same thing. It's definitely going to be going forward in time, or as we might call this, a monotonic read. So that's very important to do. How could we do this? Well, if you remember our modulo function, let's say our user ID is 20, we could do 20 mod 3 because there are 3 replicas, and that's going to be equal to 2. So let's say this one is replica 2 over here. We're always going to read from that replica in particular. So that is going to simplify things for us a lot. Obviously, this has issues if one of these replicas were to go down, and of course, like all the things I'm saying in this video, because it's still pretty overly simplistic, there are a lot of edge cases here. However, at least thinking naively about this problem and trying to get monotonic reads and writes, it's very important that basically, we're reading from the same replica. It can avoid this type of crappy behavior. Okay, then the last kind of edge case that we want to talk about is actually going over something known as consistent prefix reads. So for me to talk about this, I suppose the first thing we should do is talk about something called partitioning. So partitioning is a topic that I will be covering in depth on this channel in probably 5 or 6 videos, but for now I'm going to make things very simple. Let's say we've got one database which is super big. Rather than storing all the data in that one table, let's split it into 2 mini tables that are on different computers. So that's going to be this guy and this guy. And let's assume now that we have 2 messages basically. One is me asking my friend if he wants to grab lunch, and the other is the friend responding sure. So as you can see, those are basically going to 2 different partitions, right? The arrows are pointing to 2 different computers. And the issue with that is that each partition is going to have its own separate replica. So let's imagine that we have a replica for partition 2, which is this guy here, and a replica for partition 1. And because there's no guarantees on when messages are going to be transmitted over the network, it's possible that that message sure is going to get to P2 replica before wanna grab lunch is going over to P1 replica. And so if that happens, when person 3, the last guy in our group chat, goes and reads our chat, he's only going to see sure. And he's going to say, oh, I wonder what that was about. I don't know. And he's never going to know that he actually could have grabbed lunch with his other 2 friends. So how can we go ahead and fix a problem like this? Well, basically what this is known as is a causal dependency. The only reason that sure was sent in the first place is because it implicitly relies on the sending of wanna grab lunch. Now, obviously, it's kind of tricky in terms of how we can actually keep track of these causal dependencies, and for each application that would be specific. But let's say that there was some reply feature in our application, a button that literally says reply, and then the person wrote sure in response to wanna grab lunch. What we could do is say, okay, every time someone uses the reply functionality to respond to a message, let's make sure that they're actually both going to the same partition. That way, the messages from that partition are going to be sent in order to their replica, and we won't have to deal with any lack of consistent prefix reads, right? This will allow us to make sure that all causally dependent writes are going to be on the same replica, which will solve our issue. So what's kind of the gist of this video, guys? Well, it's not too complicated, but the point is this. We are often going to be dealing with eventual consistency now that we've brought replication into the picture. And yes, it is pretty much impossible to completely get rid of any sort of stale reads. However, there are some sort of stale reads that are going to make your user experience very bad and very janky. Those examples are pretty much the 3 that I covered in this video. And so as you can see, there are some clever solutions to basically getting rid of the most blatant violations of consistency, right? It's always possible, for example, that if I'm going to go to my Facebook newsfeed and I'm going to say, hey, let me get a newsfeed, I'm not going to see all the most up-to-date posts. However, that's not a big deal because I don't know what the most up-to-date posts are. On the other hand, if I'm going to make a write to the database and then 5 seconds later I don't see it, I'm going to be pissed off. So these 3 ways are kind of loopholes and being clever to make sure that your client of your application is not getting too pissed off due to the eventual consistency of your application. So in the next videos, I'm going to cover the specifics of certain replication topologies, how you actually want to basically send those writes from one node to another in your databases. And once we do that, we'll have a much better sense of the entire picture of replication and which type is right for you. Anyways, guys, have a good one, and I will see you in the next video. Well, guys, I'm freaking pissed off today. Why? Well, so I basically recorded this video earlier, and just because I've just moved again, I'm actually back in the US now. Of course, I didn't have my microphone set up properly, and I go to edit the fucking video, and there's no audio.